Hi, my name is Katie, and I really love TV. I have always considered myself more of a TV person than a movie person. A telephile before a cinephile. I find it so satisfying being able to watch characters develop and plots begin and end and relationships unfold over a long period of time. I refuse to limit myself in the genre of TV that I watch. I love slop reality TV. Jersey Shore is my comfort show, and I absolutely adore watching dating shows like Love Island. It's slop, it's bad TV, and it's crazy fun to watch. I also love dramas. Two of my favorite shows of all time are The Sopranos and Better Call Saul, respectively. Another two of my favorite shows are Sex and the City and Game of Thrones. Two very fundamentally different shows. Sex and the City deals with four women living in New York City and their relationships with men. Game of Thrones deals with dragons and war and medieval-esque drama. Both of these shows have something in common, and that is that they are both adaptations of books. Sex and the City is, of course, adapted from Candace Bushnell's Sex and the City, which is a compilation of her columns from when she was writing as a columnist in New York. Game of Thrones, of course, is an adaptation of the A Song of Ice and Fire series by George R.R. Martin. The difference between these two is that Sex and the City is a good adaptation, and Game of Thrones ended with season 8. I think we all remember where we were when season 8 of Game of Thrones dropped, because it was not what anyone was expecting, and it completely ruined the series. There is another genre of TV that I have failed to mention, and it's one that means a lot to me. That is anime. I love anime. It has been a part of my life for longer than I want to admit. It means a lot to me because it was there. It was there. It was there for me when I needed it. My favorite, of course, is JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. My last video from 4 years ago is a video ranting about how Netflix ruined the release schedule for Stone Ocean. Nothing has changed in 4 years. There is a rule when it comes to adapting anime and manga to live action, and that's that it is always bad. It is nearly impossible to be able to properly adapt anime and manga to the live action format, especially shows like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, which has a Part 4 adaptation movie that kind of failed. But there is one critical exception to this rule, and that's the One Piece live action. If you cannot tell, I am a One Piece fan. I'm a pretty big One Piece fan. I really love One Piece. So I took it upon myself to watch the first season of the One Piece live action and see if it really is as good as people say. I want to see if it is an exception to the rule that all live action adaptations of anime and manga are bad. It's not an exception. I at least season 1. I've not seen season 2. This video is specifically about season 1. Don't get it twisted. Don't get it twisted. I know a lot of the stuff that I'm about to talk about is going to be completely irrelevant because of season 2. But I don't really want to watch it because I struggled to get through season 1. That being said, let's fucking get into this. Do we like it? Do we like it? I spent like 10 minutes on my makeup, and you can't even tell I'm wearing any, so honestly, there was no fucking point. I didn't think the One Piece live action season 1 was very good. And why I think this is important to talk about is because when we are discussing TV shows, if you cannot convince an audience that your show is good in the first season, you're likely not going to have an audience. I have my notes. We're going to go through every episode, every character, and then I'm gonna give like my final thoughts, the things that I've heard about season 2, the good things that I've heard about season 2. Not all of this is gonna be bad. Not all of this is gonna be bad. I did take a little sip of haterade, but I don't want to be too mean. So I'm gonna try and be nice as well, especially about season 2, because I've heard really good things about season 2. So let's get into it. So I want to start with a few disclaimers. I will be looking at this show as its own interpretation of the source material. However, as it is still an adaptation, I will be comparing it to the manga because that is what they said it is based off of, not the anime. And I am going to be seeing how it compares. Is this a Game of Thrones season 8 situation, or are we looking at like a Sex and the City here? This was initially going to be an analysis of both seasons, but going through the first season was incredibly cathartic. It was an exhausting experience, and it was a genuine struggle to get through. At this point in time, despite the good things that I've heard about season 2, I have absolutely no interest in watching it, but I will be going over the good things that I've heard about it at the end, because I do think those are, like, it's important to mention. So, few disclaimers. There will be spoilers for One Piece, specifically the manga. As of recording this, I am currently caught up to the One Piece manga. If you're not caught up, but you don't give a fuck about spoilers, feel free to stay. If you really do care about spoilers a lot, you can go. You can go. This video is not for anyone. Honestly, this video is really just for me. The summary of this video could be described as grown woman in Nami cosplay rants about something that doesn't really matter that much. I am doing this for myself so I can have a place with my verbal thoughts on this, because I have a lot to say about this. This is not meant as hatred towards the cast, the crew, or anyone associated with the production of the One Piece live action. This video is not a cause to go and send people hatred. This is also not the time or place to discuss the views and politics of the people on the cast and crew. I know a lot of Zionists were involved in the making of this. I am very, very aware of that fact. This is about the art itself. My opinions and interpretations are mine and mine alone. You can absolutely feel free to disagree with them. Television is an art form. Television is art, and art is subjective, and it is fair game to be critiqued. My critiques in this video, as I mentioned, are solely for the first season. As mentioned, the One Piece live action is an adaptation. An adaptation is the translation of a piece of media from one medium to another. Most often this is seen with books being adapted into movies or TV shows. So, as I mentioned with Sex and the City, that is an example of a book that has been adapted into a TV show. An example of a book series that was adapted into movies, very obviously, Harry Potter, but we don't talk about that because of JK. An adaptation must stay as possible to its source material while fitting within the confines of that new medium. Otherwise, it is no longer an adaptation and instead an entire reinterpretation. It is not the same piece of media. It is not the same thing whatsoever. Good adaptations are able to faithfully convert the story and the characters to this new medium without losing anything that is fundamental to the story and the characters involved in that story. The One Piece live action does not do this. Let's get into the episodes! Okay, so I have grouped the episodes by their arcs. So I have episodes 1 and 2 together, episodes 3 and 4 together, episodes 5 and 6 together, and episodes 7 and 8 together. 1 and 2 is Romance Dawn. It barely feels like Romance Dawn. So we are opening with a narration sort of thing. This narration exists in the manga. It opens with discussing Roger, Gold Roger, as he is at his execution. There is a very noticeable omission here of the hook wealth, fame, power. Those are 3 very important words when it comes to describing Gold Roger and the person that Gold Roger is. Specifically when it comes to describing the caricature that he was turned into, the propaganda that he became through the Marines and the world government. Wealth, fame, and power is not exactly what Roger set out for. This is why it's an important choice of words, and it is something that is best included by a narrator, because Roger would never say such a thing about himself. The first dialogue from a character we see is from Garp. It is a monologue from Garp because he's at Roger's execution for some reason. The whole intro sequence, this does follow close to the manga, because the manga does open with this shot of Gold Roger's execution. In the manga, this has a very lasting impact. I remember reading the first chapter of One Piece, and I was absolutely captivated by Gold Roger's execution scene. This feels dry and soulless. Roger would never be the one to say the words wealth, fame, and power about himself. When he is asked about his treasure, the One Piece, his discovery of the One Piece, he opens his dialogue, by saying those words, wealth, fame, and power. Again, Roger would not say this about himself. Other people saying this about Gold Roger gives him his mythical persona of the Pirate King. To have him describe himself as such kind of gets rid of that depth of character. This does not include Roger's very famous, "You want my treasure, you can have it." Incredible line. I think this scene was done particularly well in the anime. It is so visceral. It is so visceral and emotional, and I did not get any of that same emotion here. There's also a definite lack of goofiness with Roger. I do love his interaction with the executioners in the anime, and I really do wish the live action followed more closely with that model. You can truly see in the anime that he has come to terms with his fate of being executed. This does follow a bit closer to the anime in that it does not begin with the complete flashback of Luffy and Shanks. And it begins rather with Luffy sailing and his capture by the Alvida pirates. I really wish there was a lot more continuity in the backstories. I will say this more than once throughout my critique, but it does splice in a little bit of the backstory between Luffy and Shanks. It is just not a continuous backstory, and I think that takes away from the emotional value that it has to Luffy's character. We are mentioning Zoro way too early. Zoro was mentioned way too early here. He is a bounty hunter of little renown, But for some reason here, he is very infamous. He is far more infamous. Sorry, there was like lightning outside. That was crazy. He is far more infamous than any other pirates we see in the East Blue, and he's a bounty hunter. That just does not make sense. Oh my god. I don't know if y'all heard that. There's a thunderstorm going on outside right now. So if you see like flashes of lightning or if my power goes, you're in for a treat. There is, a flashback to young Luffy and Shanks, like in the first chapter. We see Fuchsia Village, which for some reason is called Windmill Village in the show. I know Fuchsia means windmill, but I think it's important to give the village the name that it has in the anime and manga, and that is Fuchsia Village. It looks incredibly different than it does in the anime and manga. I actually prefer it in the anime and manga. It has a much more Moo Moo Meadows vibe rather than a beachside bar that you'd see at a resort where all the workers are underpaid and exploited. Shanks is not nearly goofy enough. Makino is not goofy enough. Where the fuck is Whoop Slap? Where the fuck is Mayor Whoop Slap? Where is he? There is a notable omission of important characters in this. Whoop Slap is just the beginning. Whoop Slap is just the beginning. When Shanks loses his arm, it's not a big deal. They try and make it seem like a big deal, but because of the splicing of the backstory and it not being one continuous thing, you are very much unable to develop a connection with these characters that would make it more meaningful and more emotional when Shanks loses his arm. We do not see a continuous interaction between Luffy and Shanks that would give us reason to feel emotional about this. Also, they're still in the boat. I don't know why they're still in the boat. In the anime and manga, Luffy and Shanks fall into the water where his arm is eaten by the Sea King. I feel like that detail is very important, and to have them in a boat instead, it feels a little bit weird. It's like you very easily could have avoided the Sea King eating your arm on a boat rather than when you're in the water and you have no way of protection. This is also where we see hockey introduced for the first time. It is very apparent that they are showing us Shanks using conquerors to basically tell the Sea King to fuck off. They make it very obvious and apparent here, unlike in the anime and manga where it just kind of came to all of us, I think, after reading, like, oh, he used conquerors, and that's why the Sea King left, is because he has conquerors. The scene of Zoro where we see him cut down the Baroque's work person, Mr. Seven, I think it is, it felt very weird. It felt very cult-like. At this point in time, Zoro is essentially a nobody, as I mentioned. He would not be recruited by Baroque Works, let alone anybody else. The only person we see want Zoro a part of their crew is Luffy, and that's a very important point. At this point, he should be on the island with Captain Morgan, locked the fuck up. We are also seeing Nami already, and she is stealing from two of the buggy pirates. There is so much fucking going on in the first two episodes. There are so many different plot points that are all happening at once, and there are constant cuts between present and flashback, and it is incredibly hard to follow. No idea why Nami wants a map of the Grand Line. Nami just wants money. I want money. Nami just wants money. And she wants money so her people can be free. This plotline is introduced very early on in the manga. The simultaneous introduction of Luffy with Zoro and Nami completely erases the different bonds that Luffy has with Nami and Zoro. This also completely gets rid of the fact that Zoro is the only person on the crew who Luffy specifically searched for to be a part of his crew. He wanted Zoro on his crew. He said his name. He wanted him on his crew from the beginning. This is not how they all meet, and it essentially renders their separate meetings completely irrelevant. The separate meetings for Luffy and the Straw Hats are incredibly important. It gives us time to get to know each character and their relationships with Luffy, as well as their goals and their dreams. It also gives Luffy time to develop these unique roles for each of his crew members, and again, to develop the relationships that he has with them, because they are not a monolith. He has different relationships with each of them. I have no idea why Luffy also wants a map of the Grand Line. Luffy does not, like, he's not like that. That's not a thing. As far as I can remember, that does not happen in the manga. Like, Luffy and Nami, neither of them really want a map of the Grand Line. I don't understand that plot point. I really do think they were using that just so they could have an excuse to include a big marine plot point that early on. Nami is far too willing to engage in combat. Nami is very notoriously a fucking pussy. She does not engage in combat willingly or unless she has to. I don't know why she is throwing hands with so many people. Nami is not aggressive like this. Zoro's introduction is completely butchered. He is not locked up. We do not know his character. We know absolutely nothing about him because, again, Luffy isn't specifically searching for him anymore. We learn about his character because of Luffy wanting him on his crew. This gives us a preconceived notion about Zoro and his character, as well as, one, a desire to learn more, and two, an already emotional bond that is developing between the reader or viewer and Zoro. Because we do not know his character, there's no emotional connection to the girl who dropped the onigiri. In the manga, this is a very emotional scene. When the little girl on the island brings him food when he is locked up as a kind gesture, he refuses to eat it, and she drops it in the dirt. He ends up getting untied and eating it anyways, despite the fact that it had been dropped. It is a very meaningful scene, and it says a lot about who Zoro is as a person. This emotional impact is completely missing because we know nothing about Zoro or his character, and we have not gotten time to see his interactions with this little girl and the people of this island who live there. Why is Helmeppo attractive? Why is Helmeppo hot? What? Sorry. Okay. I don't know why I wrote that, but it's in there. I do kind of enjoy the little Diary of Kobe Meppo cover story inclusion. It is not accurate to what the actual cover story is in the manga, but I actually really like the way that they adapted this, and I think it would have been better if they kept the Diary of Kobe Meppo cover story to the first 2 episodes rather than making it an ongoing plot point. That was quite annoying to me. And the inclusion of Baroque works this early on was very confusing to me. I feel like this could have been done better had it not been part of Zoro's plotline. I think it would have been a better decision because if we're going to include Garp, we should make him a meaningful character rather than just whatever the fuck he is in this. I'll get to that. I think the Baroque Works tie-in should have come with Garp, considering Crocodile is a warlord. And apparently Garp has no issues interacting with the warlords. Also, I have no idea why Baroque Works would even be in the East Blue at this point when their goal is literally in Alabasta. Again, Garp, I will talk about him extensively later. We get more of the flashback between Luffy and Shanks. This is how we see Shanks lose his arm, as I previously described. Shanks also remarks in this flashback how he is going after the One Piece. Shanks doesn't go after the One Piece until after Wano. We are in the East Blue. Shanks does not give a fuck about the One Piece. I don't know why. I don't know why everyone is so obsessed in the One Piece with the One Piece here. Because that is not the goal of most of these characters. The goals of most of these characters are completely different from that of Luffy. Luffy is supposed to be very unique in his desire of finding the One Piece and specifically becoming king of the pirates. I don't know why. There's also the fucking map of the Grand Line. Everyone wants this map of the Grand Line. Why does everyone want the map of this Grand Line? I feel like Buggy wanting it makes the most sense out of everyone. I don't know why Nami wants it. Nami has access to these things already. Nobody else should have the motivation for this map of the Grand Line at this point. That was Romance Dawn. Let's go on to Syrup Village. Okay, so episodes 3 and 4 cover the Buggy Pirates. Episodes 3 and 4 cover Syrup Village and a bit more about Buggy. Episode 2 in Romance Dawn is very Buggy centric. It felt like a Nothing Burger episode. I like Jeff Ward as Buggy. I feel like he feels like One Piece to me. He feels like his character to me. But we got to see more of Buggy and the Buggy Pirates in episodes 3 and 4, which is Syrup Village. The Buggy Pirates thing, it felt kind of like out of place. In the manga and anime, it was done a lot better. It kind of messes with the flow of things. The flow of this show is already absolutely horrendous. There are constant jumps between storylines and flashbacks, and it completely ruins the continuity. So having another plot point on top of that just makes it even more confusing. Usopp's whole thing kind of changed. It was very disappointing seeing a lot of people in Syrup Village be removed. Again, the omission of characters is very prevalent in this. Carrot, Onion, and Pepper, who are the kids who follow Usopp and call him Captain Usopp, and he considers his crew, are not in this. This completely takes away from the whole Captain Usopp thing. The Captain Usopp thing is very fundamental to Usopp's character. No Captain Usopp should mean no brave warrior of the sea. He is trying to live up to his father's reputation, be a captain of his own crew, and inspire them. And he cannot do that without Carrot, Onion, or Pepper. He also he aspires to live up to all of his lies. He aspires to be this brave warrior that he has told Carrot, Onion, and Pepper that he is. He does not want to continue lying to them because he feels bad about it. He feels guilt for lying to them because they are kids and they do believe in him. Completely getting rid of Carrot, Onion, and Pepper, it completely removes this really fundamental part of Usopp's character. I enjoyed the villains, especially in this arc. I feel like this does the Black Cat Pirates justice, especially more justice than they were given in the manga and anime. I think it was actually a lot more enjoyable to watch than it was in the anime and in the manga. Syrup Village dragged for me. I had a hard time getting through it in the manga. This felt a lot more fun. So I will say that is a thumbs up from me. I'm really unsure how I feel about Kobe and Helmeppo still being around the Straw Hats at this point. I feel like it would have been more meaningful to make Kobe Meppo span like the first 2 episodes, because this is just introducing meaningless lore. This does not matter. Very fundamentally, Kobe and Helmeppo do not matter here. The Zoro plot completely gets rid of the fact that this is supposed to be Usopp's arc. These are supposed to be Usopp-centric episodes, and we are getting an entire episode dedicated to Zoro and his backstory. When he is in the well, because he gets thrown down a well. Zoro gets thrown down a well. This is when we get his backstory. And it's wrong. His backstory is all fucked up. And I feel like the live action could have done something that the manga and the anime were too scared to do out loud. And that is have Kuina very overtly kill herself. That phrasing is so bad, but it is implied in the anime and manga that Kuina took her own life. And I feel like, considering that Kuina and Zoro are aged up here for some reason, and that this is meant to be a more mature TV show, I really do feel like they could have had that and made it a real meaningful thing. And I think it would have added a lot of depth to Zoro's character. Instead, Kuina's death is never explained. It's not even implied anything happened to her. There's no oh, she fell down the stairs or anything like that. And because we have no real connection with these characters, this backstory feels completely out of nowhere and did not have any real emotional impact. That is also not how he gets Wado Ichimonji. I don't know why he took it. He just kind of took it from Kuina's dad rather than it being gifted to him by Kuina's dad. Removing that gifting aspect of Wado Ichimonji to Zoro is removing a vital part of Zoro's character. This sword means a lot to him. And it is very symbolic that he is gifted this sword by Kuina's father. It almost feels like he's passing the torch to him and saying, do not let my daughter's death be for nothing. Succeed in her goal for me. And that is completely gone here. I thought the Usokaya moment was very cute. I feel like it was a very sweet addition. I'm a big Usokaya fan. So I thought it was very sweet and cute. There are lots, again, so many jumps between plots that just have no connection to each other whatsoever. There are a lot of moments and scenes between Kobe and Garp here. And I have a lot of issues with this. Again, I will come to that when I want to discuss Garp. Arlong is introduced here in an interaction with Buggy. Arlong would never leave Kokoyashi Village, nor would he actually go after Luffy. He has no reason to. Arlong's goal is to show humans the treatment that he has received his entire life as a fishman by controlling Nami's island. That was Syrup Village. Episode 5 is Barati! Yes, I say it Barati. I don't know why the fuck they call it Baratie. Baratie. Es-tu fucking sérieuse, là? I'm a French speaker. If it were called Baratie, it would have an accent aigu on the last E, but it does not, so that's Barati. It's pronounced Barati. I don't know why they're calling it Baratie. Again, this episode feels very Zoro and Nami-centric. All of these episodes feel like they don't focus at all on the characters that these arcs are for, and they are focused rather on Zoro and Nami. Weird. These episodes are fundamentally about establishing Luffy and Sanji's dynamic and relationship. Also, Zoro and Nami's drinking game that they do is stolen from Game of Thrones. I don't know if it's stolen, but it is, they play that exact game in Game of Thrones between Tyrion, Missandei, and Grey Worm. Kobe is very oddly self-aware. Mihawk was called in by Garp specifically to go after Luffy. Nobody is supposed to give a fuck about Luffy at this point. Luffy is a complete Nobody. And Garp is going after him relentlessly. Garp would not do that. Not every character needs a purposeful interaction with the Straw Hats. Many of the interactions that the Straw Hats have with a lot of the villains come as coincidences. And that's important. We need interactions between characters that don't really have meaning. They just happen. That's how relationships are built. That's how character bonds are developed. Not through everything being meaningful, but by natural interactions that just sort of happen. Zoro's epithet, for some reason, is Demon Pirate Hunter. That is not Zoro's epithet. He is just either Bounty Hunter or Pirate Hunter. Currently, he is also known as the King of Hell. So I don't know where the demon part is coming from. That's just a very weird addition. I don't understand why there is so much Zoro Nami focus, specifically Zoro focus here. Zoro challenged Mihawk to a duel and everyone was worried for some reason. We have barely seen any real interactions between the crew. Not some monologue from a character, but just conversation. Quality time spent together. We have not spent time sitting with these characters and seeing how they interact. These relationships have essentially come out of nowhere. We have barely seen an interaction between the crew as a whole, and we are meant to be invested in their relationships and their dynamics. Clap if you care. I'm not fucking clapping. Zoro is not the first mate. Zoro is very notoriously not the first mate of the Straw Hats. Zoro is the swordsman. This is like swordsman erasure. Zoro like serves literally as the crew's swordsman. He's not the first mate. That's like, this is very contentious in the One Piece community, referring to Zoro as the first mate when he is just not. Again, when did everyone become friends? Nami and Zoro referring to each other as friends, the crew referring to each other as friends. We have not seen a real interaction between these characters. This relationship came out of nowhere. I have no insight into the dynamic that has led to this point, that has given them the ability to call each other this. Luffy is not supposed to receive notoriety until after Arlong Park, where he is issued his very first bounty. Mihawk just happened to be in the East. This is a very notorious piece of agenda that Mihawk just sits and waits for fodder in the East Blue, and he's not actually that strong, and he paints his sword black, whatever. Yeah, Mihawk just happened to be in the East at that time, and Zoro seized his opportunity because Mihawk is allegedly world's greatest swordsman. It was a great use of foreshadowing for Luffy to use Dragon Sign, which is, it's not my place to come between a man and his dream. I really like that they had Luffy say that. It kind of creates this unknown bond between, father and son. I actually really like that. Also, I was so glad they included the "I don't hunt rabbits with a cannon" line. That is my favorite line in the entire manga. It is so fucking funny. I'm so glad they included it. I have no idea why Wado Ichimonji is not being used all the time here. Zoro is known for his 3-sword style. To have him just not use that is strange. That is not Zoro at that point. I understand that a lot of that has to do with the logistics of a real person carrying a real sword between their teeth. I suffer from TMJ. I have crazy lockjaw a lot of the time. That would fucking kill my jaw. I feel like there are CGI ways and practical ways to get around this without having to stress the jaw that much. So I feel like there was definitely a workaround there that they just were too lazy to figure out. The Mihawk's sword, Yoru, does not look like it has a black blade. Mihawk paints his sword black. Again, there are zero stakes in the relationships between the Straw Hats. When did they become so close? Why is this now when Zoro chooses to become loyal to Luffy? What has led him to this point? What has led him to making this decision? We know so little about their relationship. We have seen so little of their relationship that it just makes no sense how he would have come to this conclusion. Sanji is missing for the majority of the first episode. This is his arc. This is Barati. Zeph was low-key funny as fuck. He sounded like Gordon Ramsay. Unfortunately, that is not Zeph. That is not Zeph's character. He is such a dick to Sanji. He is like, he's not like tough love, like, oh, father-son energy, I'm giving my son tough love. He is just a fucking asshole to him. Also, why is he a doctor? What are we doing here? What are we doing here? And again, when did Sanji become so close to the... I'm like getting comfortable. This is gonna be a long ass fucking video. Sorry, I need to get comfortable. Ignore my rolls. When did Sanji become so close with the Straw Hats? He was incredibly reluctant to join them. And only did so when Zeph basically told him that he could. And that doesn't happen until the latter half of the arc. Just again, I feel like they aren't giving us any time to really sit with these characters and see, like, show us how they interact, show us why these relationships and dynamics exist, show us why we should care about these characters and their dynamics. Why does Zoro's Haramaki change color? It's always supposed to be green. Zoro's Haramaki is always green. Never is it not green, actually. Sanji not seeing Zoro's duel is a crazy oversight. This is partially what inspires him to join the Straw Hats in the first place. He also has no interaction with, like barely any interaction, with, Jin here, who is the guy that he feeds, who is part of Don Krieg's crew, who he feeds. Also, Don Krieg fucking dies. Don Krieg is killed within the first 15 minutes of the first episode of this arc. Don Krieg is the main villain of the Barati arc, and he dies within the first 10 minutes of the first episode of this arc. Are we being fucking serious? Are you being so serious? Soyez sérieux. Oh my god. Zeph's dream was never to find the All Blue. He actually made fun of Sanji for wanting to find the All Blue. So I don't know why they're doing that. That just does not make sense. I don't know why we're getting the Mont Blanc Noland story now. Why is Nami reading to Zoro? Again, Zoro and Nami have a very weird dynamic in this. It is very, like, flirtatious and romantic. Also, like, almost, it's very uncomfortable to watch. Why are we fighting Fishman and not Don Krieg? We fight Arlong at Barati for some reason. This is meant to be the Don Krieg fight. And the Don Krieg fight is very important in the anime and manga because Don Krieg has tried and failed to exist as a pirate within the Grand Line. And he tells this to these Straw Hats who have the same goal of going to the Grand Line and trying to find the One Piece. Don Krieg is telling them, y'all aren't ready. You guys are not ready. You are not going to make it if I cannot make it. And this interaction is fundamentally very important to establishing the Grand Line as this unlawful, unruly place filled with pirates. Instead, that is completely taken away. Again, Don Krieg gets fucking killed by Mihawk within the first 15 minutes of the episode. This is so bad that it has me coughing. I'm getting comfortable. I'm sorry. There is such little emotional impact here. Like, there is no emotional impact here. I still don't understand the Grand Line map plot. I don't understand what we're doing with that. What are we doing? I don't know why do we want the map? Why does Nami want the map of the Grand Line? Nami being revealed to be an Arlong pirate here, specifically in the way that it was revealed, was very strange. Nami just sort of, like, leaves in the anime. She just kind of, like, dips. She no goodbye or anything. She just leaves them behind. again, I know nothing about Nami's character at this point, so I don't know why I'm supposed to feel like, oh no, she betrayed the crew. Oh no, this is such a big deal. I'm so emotional about this. I have not seen her interact properly with any of these characters besides Zoro. And I shouldn't feel like this. I shouldn't feel like this. Any reason to get Sanji shirtless? Any reason to get Sanji shirtless? Sanji spends a lot of his time aura farming. Most of these, besides Usopp and Luffy, most of the characters here just spend their time like aura farming. I don't understand what's up with this whole like acting like a captain shit. That was just not a thing in the anime or manga. I like it is mentioned once in this arc, and then we never bring up the whole acting like a captain thing ever again. It is completely meaningless. The Sanji and Zeph send-off felt completely undeserved, considering how much of a fucking dick he was to Sanji. Again, clap if you care. Clap if you care. I'm not clapping. That had such little emotional impact on me. It is genuinely just not funny. I cried reading Sanji's backstory and watching that send-off in the manga. There's nothing here. Bro. Okay, last 2 episodes. Episode 7 and 8, Arlong Park. Arlong Park. Boy. Arlong Park is certainly something to behold. By far the weakest 2 episodes of the entire fucking season. I don't think people will disagree with me on that one. Episode 7 and 8, Arlong Park, are the worst episodes of the entire season. I don't like how Arlong just kind of like pulled up to Barati instead of just like kind of staying in Arlong Park. He has no reason to be searching for Luffy. He is not searching for Luffy. I don't know why he would be searching for Luffy. It's never really explained that well in this. Nami just leaves them without notice, and they follow her. Specifically, Luffy wants to follow her because at that point in the manga, we have already seen these characters interact. We have become invested in their relationships and their dynamics. That does not exist here. When they follow Nami, that is when they are introduced to Arlong and the Arlong pirates. Why is Garp still involved? Why is there still a plotline with Garp? What are we doing? Garp does not need, like, Garp's storyline in this is just completely, like, unneeded and unnecessary. At this point, he does not need to be involved in anything. Like, his storyline could have began and ended with the Diary of Kobe Meppo cover story adaptation in episodes 1 and 2. Nobody should care about Luffy at this point because Luffy is a nobody. Nobody has any idea who Luffy is. And that's the point. Luffy is not supposed to gain notoriety until he defeats Arlong at Arlong Park. Buggy is a very conflicting character for me because he feels very goofy and he feels very One Piece. Jeff Ward's performance as Buggy is absolutely incredible. It is one of my favorites in the live action, but his involvement this deep into the East Blue makes absolutely no sense to me. Sanji saying about Nami, she is a mystery to be unraveled, felt very icky. That was a very, like, this is just like a complaint. All of this is a complaint from me. But that line felt specifically very icky. It was very much like flirting versus sexual harassment, and that was definitely leaning more towards sexual harassment. Taz Skylar has a way of delivering things that just makes it uncomfortable. Sanji is way too suave. If he was more simpy or pathetic when he was saying that line, I could probably get behind it a lot more, and it would be more of the flirting end of the spectrum. Following the intro sequence, we are immediately shown part of Nami's backstory. It cuts in and out between scenes of current Nami, which messes with the continuity. When flashbacks come out of nowhere and we are given like little explanation for them, it takes away all emotional value it once held. It just feels just like a meaningless exposition dump. When we do not have an emotional connection with the characters, it genuinely just makes it hard to care about them. At this point in time, we do not know really anything about these characters. We don't know anything about these characters that should make us want to learn more about them and their backstory. Again, with the tropical vibes and not the Moo Meadows vibes. And again, like Fuchsia Village being called Windmill Village instead of Fuchsia Village, it is called Cocoa Village here and not Kokoyasi Village. I'm calling it Kokoyasi Village because that's what it's called in the anime and manga. Nami in the manga is very isolated from the Arlong pirates. She spends the majority of her time drawing maps and getting money. She is not this integrated into their crew. And it ruins her character. It makes there feels like a disconnect between the Nami in the anime and manga and the Nami that we know here. Nami would not be sitting down and gambling with the Arlong pirates, especially after what they've done to her village. She would not be doing that. And especially because Arlong himself makes Nami feel very isolated. Nami is very eye on the prize here. She wants to succeed in her goal of getting enough money to free her people. Holy fuck, it is like raining so hard outside, Jesus Christ. This is when we finally see Nami and Arlong bring up the importance of money. It was her entire shtick in the manga and anime. The map plot still makes no sense. Like, Arlong is from the Grand Line. Arlong is from Fishman Island. He knows how to get to the Grand Line. He knows how to get to the Grand Line. He does not need a map. Basically, as soon as Nami hands over this map to Arlong, that plot basically became irrelevant because the map of the Grand Line was never mentioned again. It was a completely useless plot point. Again, this is like the first time we are seeing Nami talk about, like, I want to collect this money. We don't see her actively trying to steal money from others. She is called Cat Burglar Nami for a reason, and we do not see her cat burgling. That is a very important part of her character that is just introduced in Arlong Park. It feels like it was introduced way too late into the series at this point. There are more scenes with Garp. What are we doing here? What are we doing here? Nami's relationship with the village and villagers is completely fucking ruined. It completely takes away any emotional connection between them. And completely gets rid of the stakes. There are stakes. They just hold no real importance because the village and villagers treat Nami like shit because they don't know about her goal. In the anime and manga, the villagers are willing to die for her. They are willing to die for her. Why are we removing that? Why are we removing their loyalty? Why are we removing how important Nami is to the people of Kokoyasi Village? These are her people. This is her community. And it was just completely fucking ruined. The deal between Nami and Arlong has been brought up way too late at this point. It feels like it came from completely out of left field. Along those lines, Arlong's beef with the Marine Nezumi was also introduced way too late, I feel. Especially considering that Arlong is present in Barati and even at the end of Syrup Village. I feel like we could have seen him have a lot more interactions with Nezumi, so it wouldn't just feel like it comes out of nowhere. Belmare's name is actually never said. We do not know Belmare's name. In the One Piece live action, Belmare's name is not said a single time. I felt no weight when she was shot. There is no weight because we do not know these characters. There is a serious lack of explanation into the relationships between Nami, Nojiko, and Belmare. We see a much more in-depth backstory between Nami, Nojiko, and Belmare in the anime and manga. And I feel like part of that was because they were able to do it as one whole thing rather than it just be cutting in and out between current Nami and past Nami. Again, with the relationships between the Straw Hats, we have not had enough time to sit with these characters. I don't know why Luffy and Zoro are so convinced that they know their crewmates when we have not been shown them getting to know each other whatsoever. Jinbei was mentioned! I love Jinbei! Jinbei mentioned! Was Nami's goal to get the map of the Grand Line or to get the money to free her people? This is very poorly explained because for the majority of the show, since Nami's introduction, her goal seemingly has been to get that map of the Grand Line. But now suddenly it's completely changed at the last minute. Weird. Nami explains her reasoning for stealing money and for working with the Arlong pirates to Nojiko rather than everyone already knowing. Her reasoning, dog shit reason, I couldn't lose anyone else. Are we being serious? It is such a poor excuse as to why Nami just did not tell them. Nojiko's apology here feels completely undeserved, and it does not make sense to me how Nami has not grown to resent them. This is her community. They have ostracized her completely. They have ousted her from the community completely. They all actively hate her. Nojiko spit on her fucking shoes. You do not live through that and not grow to at least hold some form of resentment. Nami's money is taken by Nezumi. I don't feel any emotion. That plot point was introduced in that episode. I don't know why I should care about a plot point that was introduced literally 10 minutes ago. I feel like I would have had more of a reaction if this was Nami's goal the whole time and we knew about it. We have no time to sit with Nami's goal, to process it, to think about what it means, and what that means for her relationship to the village and the community that she comes from. The walk to Arlong Park is a very famous scene, specifically like in the East Blue Saga, but also in One Piece as a whole. It is a very important scene. But because the crew here have not been shown to have any real interactions together, this scene feels completely undeserved and unnecessary, and it feels a bit soulless, which is really disappointing because the walk to Arlong Park is so iconic. The lack of interaction between Nami and the villagers means that there is no real meaning or symbolism in the tangerines or the pinwheel. They are just sort of put there as motifs rather than them having any meaning behind them. Nami does not have enough interaction with Genzo as her father figure to be able to make the connection between the pinwheels. The pinwheel thing is Genzo's entire thing. That's why she has the pinwheel tattoo on her arm. The tangerines are Belmare's thing, and we barely see any real backstory having to do with the tangerine groves. So that symbolism actually just means nothing. Nojiko telling the villagers about Nami's plan and they immediately believe her and apologize feels undeserved. Again, it feels really undeserved. We do not know these villagers. And we barely, in the flashbacks, get to see Nami's relationship with them. I don't know where the playful beef between Sanji and Zoro came from. It just kind of feels like it came out of nowhere. It already existed in Marathi, but it's just happening here. This is so confusing. There's so much happening at the same time. It is genuinely impossible to follow. There are so many jumps between fights and conversations and monologues and exposition dumps. You cannot tell between the main plot and the subplot. There is no differentiation there. They are seen as equally important, and that makes it incredibly hard to follow. What am I supposed to care about more? You know, what am I supposed to prioritize? If you follow me on Twitter, I tweeted this out. The fight with Arlong genuinely ends less than halfway into the second fucking episode of Arlong Park. Arlong is defeated in the first 25 minutes of the second episode of Arlong Park. This is his arc. The main villain of this arc is Garp. What are we doing here? What is the point of the fight with Garp? If it was gonna lead to nowhere too. Like, that fight completely just ends. It's a complete nothing burger of a fucking fight. It was for nothing. Everything Garp did this season was for fucking nothing. You could completely get rid of his entire plot, and the story would be exactly the fucking same. Everything is over and Luffy receives his first bounty. We finally get, like, just a regular conversation and interaction between the Straw Hats. And I have been waiting for this the entire season. I have been waiting for this the whole season, and we are getting it in the last episode. Mihawk and Shanks interact. This is Shanks' agenda. They give Nami tangerine trees to remind her of her home, but we never really see her emotional connection to the tangerine trees, or what they symbolize. The foot on the barrel part where they're all saying their dreams, I felt no emotion for any of them except for Usopp. Smoker at the end. Ultimately, I feel like the biggest piece of symbolism for this adaptation is that the Straw Hats flag is always on a black field, and here it is on a white field. I feel like that is symbolic of what this adaptation is like. This is gonna be a long fucking video. Okay, episode summary and criticism concluded. There are a few more points I want to talk about before I go into my analysis of the characters. Specifically, I want to bring up something I'd like to call blockbusterfication, which is that big budgets don't necessarily mean we need to do extravagant sets and costumes, and that oftentimes a big budget ruins the original vibe and aesthetic of the piece of media that it stems from. Why the term blockbusterfication? This is basically turning television into $100 million endeavors, equivalent to blockbuster films, which is simply extravagance in exchange for good writing, and for what made the original so good. These sets felt too big. They don't fit, like, the dingy vibe of One Piece. And I think the budget should have been focused more onto the fighting and the devil fruit abilities, especially for Luffy, because we do not see Luffy fight almost at all this season. His fighting abilities are nerfed significantly, and his powers do not feel Luffy. They feel much more Mr. Fantastic or Elastigirl than they do Luffy. Some other points. This feels very much like the story of One Piece was copy and pasted into the stereotypical drama adventure show format, with an overarching villain of the season, and establishing a major organization or plot point that will come to fruition later on. This would be Baroque Works, and the overarching villain would be Garp. One Piece cannot fit into this mold. It just does not work, and I feel like they failed trying to make it fit into that mold. Zoro and Nami do not feel like separate characters to me. This is hard to explain unless you've seen it, but they do not have separate dynamics with Luffy, and they are instead treated as a unit this entire season. They are also very similar personality-wise here. They both make their one-liners and their quips, and they're both rather emo and edgy rather than having any sort of personality. After their specific arcs, and even during their arcs, there was little to no focus on Usopp or Sanji, especially with their shared dynamics with Luffy. Again, everything feels very Zoro and Nami-centric. The separate introductions for Usopp and Sanji felt a lot more cohesive and better at establishing their use and their purpose on the crew. They feel like individuals who have their own goals, dreams, and backgrounds, and they're able to have these individual relationships with Luffy. I wish Nami and Zoro had separate introductions and we got to know them separately and create an emotional connection with them as individuals, because I do not feel like we got the chance to do that. I feel like they are one single character split into two people, which is very disappointing. Everything feels rushed, and there is very little time to breathe, and for once I would have preferred more filler. I think this has to do with the fact that this is only 8 episodes. You are adapting 100 chapters into 8 episodes, and there were supposed to be 2 more episodes. This was supposed to be a 10-episode season. I think they needed those 2 extra episodes. I really do feel like if they had those 9th and 10th episodes, we would have had time to be able to see interactions between the crew and understand where these relationships came from. So I'm very disappointed that we didn't get that. The best description I have for how this felt is the live-action Cat in the Hat movie. It felt like a fever dream. It felt like I was taking drugs. Sanji's fighting looks fucking insane. It does not look good. The lack of continuity in the plot lines not only makes it hard to follow, but it gets rid of any emotional impact because we do not get to see one solid character interaction without it jumping to a completely different plot point. We do not get the time to be invested in certain plot points because there are so many happening at once. There are a lot of exposition dumps and monologues that are meant to be deep. Not everything has to mean something. Very rarely do I feel like these people are actually having a normal conversation. Instead, it just feels like endless amounts of monologues rather than conversing and speaking to individuals. In giving every single thing meaning and giving all words and interactions meaning, you get rid of all meaning that was there. You need mundane, normal interactions to create emotional depth. This is why shows like The Sopranos and Game of Thrones work, is that we see just regular normal interactions with the characters beyond just endless monologues and exposition dumps. No Johnny and Yosaku made me very sad. They are very important characters to Zoro. They literally give their swords to Zoro in Arlong Park when he is fighting. There is so much exposition and such little talking, yet no development of the characters. All of this feels like bad fan fiction rather than an adaptation. Okay, the characters. I have a lot to say about the characters because beyond the writing for the episodes individually, the writing for the characters really annoys me and really bugs me. Okay, so for Luffy manages to maintain his goofiness, his innocence, and this romanticism for adventure. But I feel like the way he was written just does not allow this performance to shine. I feel like the writing of this character makes this a hard performance to do. And his goofiness is turned up to a level that just makes him seem naive and stupid, almost. And Luffy is not stupid. He has his moments, but he's not stupid. He's actually quite smart, and he has really good intuition. They completely get rid of any of his knack for strategy, which is a very important part of his character, and that's what makes his pre-time skip fights so fun to watch, because the pre-time skip fights, he required strategy to be able to defeat these villains rather than just more hockey, which is what it is post-time skip. His fighting skills have been completely fucking nuked. I was incredibly disappointed that the budget went towards these extravagant sets rather than towards the CGI for the devil fruit abilities. He's the main character too. I feel like we should be dedicating most of our budget to the CGI for his devil fruit. He truly cares for his crew. Even though I didn't understand where or what occurred for these relationships to develop. And I think this is probably the most accurate thing that they did with his character. It is a very odd portrayal. I feel as if I'm watching a parody rather than a real TV performance. I do not think that Iñaki Godoy is a bad actor. I just don't think he knows exactly how to portray Luffy with the way that he's written here, and that's not really... I won't blame him for that. I think that's the fault of the writers. Zoro was a massive letdown. Probably my second least favorite characterization in live action. We will get to my least favorite. his backstory felt rushed. It didn't hold the weight to me that it did in the manga and the anime. It also completely loses its original meaning simply by making them older and basically the same size. Zoro is actually larger than Kuina. The main conflict between Zoro and Kuina is that she is stronger and older than him. And more importantly, she is exponentially larger than he is. This is partially explained, but it's mentioned in like a 30-second like conversation clip. So it doesn't really like have that same weight. Nobody cries reading Zoro's backstory. I cried reading Zoro's backstory. I didn't cry here, which is very upsetting because it meant a lot to me in the manga. Again, with the simultaneous introduction with Nami, it means that we don't see Zoro develop his relationship with Luffy separately from Nami. Like, they are one character and they develop their connection with Luffy together rather than separately. So we don't see Zoro become Luffy's guy, like his ride or die, like his loyal guy, because Zoro is universally used as a representation of loyalty. I don't see that here. I don't get that here. He has a closer relationship with Nami than he does with Luffy. Zoro is also specifically the only crewmate that Luffy really wanted by name on his crew. He was loyal to Luffy for showing him kindness and for helping him out when he was captured by Captain Morgan. He gave him all 3 of his swords despite not knowing that all of them were his. That was completely erased here. There is no reason given as to why he has a strong sense of unwavering loyalty towards Luffy. Like the relationship between Zoro and Luffy and Nami and Luffy and the Straw Hats more broadly, it just comes from nowhere. There is no real Zoro in this. He is far too brooding and too serious. Zoro, while generally a more serious character, is shown having fun and laughing and being goofy with the crew, especially pre-time skip. This version of Zoro not only takes himself too seriously, but it feels almost entirely emotionless. I feel like his backstory with Kuina, had they really doubled down and said the quiet part out loud and make Kuina take her own life, I feel like this would have been able to actually explain a lot of his hesitance towards being close with the crew, his reasoning for not being able to be goofy and for having fun, the reason he is so cold and brooding and serious. Instead, it's just kind of comes out of nowhere. Genuinely disappointed in seeing his character essentially be boiled down to emo samurai guy. Like, it really bugs me. He has a crazy vocal fry. It is genuinely hard to listen to. Like, he exists really to give, like, corny one-liners in this. And to Aura Farm. Like, this vocal fry is genuinely hard to listen to. Lack of 3 sword style, again, I understand this is for logistical reasons. But I feel like there was definitely, like, a way to work around this. The lack of Sanji rivalry! Why did we only get, like, a 30-second combined interaction between them? Hello? That is such an important rivalry. Heated rivalry, some might say. Still don't know why he's called the Demon Pirate Hunter. Like, where does the demon part come from? What happened there? Where'd that come from? East Blue Zoro, while he is somewhat known, he is not as infamous as they are making him out to be here. He has very little infamy at this point, nor is he well known by that many pirates. He has been rather unsuccessful in his bounty hunting. I don't know how to explain it, but the existence of this version of Zoro, is a Bogart upscale. Don't ask me to explain how, it just is. I did not like this performance. The vocal fry genuinely makes this hard to listen to, and I felt a serious disconnect watching this performance. Nami! I'm dressed as Nami. Does it look good? It doesn't look that good. I am a big fan of Emily Rudd. I love Emily Rudd. I loved her in Fear Street. She is a horror queen. Unfortunately, I dislike the way that she was written here. Again, with the simultaneous introduction, it really feels like a disrespect to her character and to her relationship with Luffy. And this especially affects Arlong Park for me, because we have not gotten to know Nami by herself. Because she was introduced with Zoro, and because Zoro and Nami's characters are so closely intertwined in this, they sort of, like, this removes any real meaning behind Arlong Park here. I feel like if she was introduced separately, as she was in the manga and anime, we could have had more time to get to know her and to see her relationships develop from the very beginning, and to really get to know her as her own person. The fact that Kokoyashi Village is unaware of why she is helping Arlong completely gets rid of the emotion of it. They want to be able to support her, but they cannot. They are willing to die for her, need be, just so she can be free from Arlong. This does not exist here. Instead, her relationships that exist in the manga that are so meaningful and important to her, the relationships that are the whole reason she is doing this, are full of hate. Full of visceral hatred. Especially her relationship with Nojiko. I genuinely feel like this was a horrible writing choice. I feel like this removes any emotional connection and any stakes that exist. And it just removes any connection that she might have had to the people who are supposed to care about her. I think it was a really, really, really stupid writing choice. Again, with the seriousness, she is very much like Zoro. She is very brooding and serious, but, like, she's serious in the manga, but she's very, like, big sister, like, I'm gonna tell you off serious. Not like Zoro emotionless serious. That's what she's giving here. She gets on Luffy and Zoro like she would, like, little brothers, and that does not exist here. She gives off very, like, hashtag rebellious, hashtag edgy, like, teenage girl. And that's not Nami. She lacks emotion. She lacks kindness. She feels like Zoro. Why is she so deeply critical of the people around here? Why is she such a cynic? Nami is not a cynical character. Again, why isn't Nami a fucking pussy? She's terrified of everything. She would not be throwing hands willingly. You need to aggravate her. You need to give her a reason to fight before she actually fights. She will not engage otherwise. In fact, she will run the opposite fucking direction. Why is she so aggressive? There is a specific remark in episode 5 where she states that she cannot navigate and that her shards are useless in fog. Let's be real here. A little bit of fucking fog is not going to stop Nami. One of the best navigators in the entire fucking globe. And you're telling me a little bit of fucking fog is going to stop her from being able to use her charts? No. That's not my Nami. Nami, while creeped out by Sanji many times, she does use his kindness for her own good in the anime and manga. Even at Barati, she happily accepts his gifts of free food and drink, and instead she greets him here with disgust. I think the performance here was I think it was a good performance. I really liked Emily Rudd's performance. I think she's a great actress, and I wish she was in better projects. I think she should be in more horror stuff. I think the problems with Nami here really do stem from character writing and dialogue decisions. Usopp! I really don't have much to say about Usopp. He is by far my favorite adaptation of the original character. I think he feels the most authentically One Piece to me. He embodies the joy and the wonder that came with consuming the manga for the first time and the joy of pre-time skip. He embodies that. My only qualms are that, like in the anime and in the manga, he has been sidelined. I really wish he had not been sidelined during his own arc, and they made that whole arc more Zoro-centric. I am really upset about that. My only qualms are that, like in the anime and manga, he was sidelined essentially after Syrup Village. And he feels a bit too cool. He needs to be a little bit more dorky and wimpy, but I'm honestly like that's just like a complete nothing burger complaint, because I love Usopp in this. He was great in this. It was an absolutely incredible performance by Jacob Romero Gibson. He embodies Usopp. He feels the most like One Piece, and he feels like he belongs in the universe, and he feels the most like his character. But yeah, amaze. It was incredible. Sanji, he's too suave. He needs to be a bit more pathetic. He needs to be more down bad. He needs to be a simp. He is a hopeless romantic in the anime and manga. Instead, he just feels like a romantic, and he doesn't feel hopeless. I feel like in an attempt to correct his really gross gag in the anime and manga, they overcompensated and made him way too suave and cool. I'm not saying this as an excuse to make him a creep or a weirdo. He just needs to be a little bit more over the top and pathetic about his romanticism. A bit like Usopp, he's too cool and he has too much aura. It's a real shame that this is likely the only real backstory of his that we're gonna get. His relationship with Zeph and the other cooks is so toned down that it's not even funny. That's not how he meets Zeph in the first place, and Zeph is a fucking dick to him again. They do not share the same dream, but Zeph supports him unconditionally like a father would his son, and that dynamic is very important, and I feel like it was lost here. Where are his eyebrows? Where are the curly brow, dart brow, curly? Where are they? Where are his eyebrows? His eyebrows are a very important part of his character. These are like the basis of most of Zoro's jokes about him. And also, the eyebrows come from the fact that he is a Vinsmoke by blood. Judge has those same fucking curly eyebrows. That's where he gets it from. Where are his eyebrows? He just looks like some guy. He just looks like a fucking blonde guy with a crazy chin. Sorry. Again, he was like sidelined like even during his own arc, he was sidelined in favor of more Zoro and Nami plot lines. He is barely featured in the first episode of his arc, which is fucking insane. Even at this point in the manga, there's the obvious emergence of what will become the monster trio. I don't get that here. It feels like East Blue, like, it feels like Romance Dawn trio. It feels very much like Luffy, Zoro, Nami. Nobody else really matters in this. That's what it feels like. I don't like this performance. This doesn't feel like Sanji. This performance really does not feel like Sanji. This is just some fucking blonde guy who can cook and fights by kicking. He feels like Akiyama from Yakuza rather than Sanji. Taz Skylar. I will never be able to look at Sanji the same ever again. After the Shaft video, I'm sorry, I had to bring it up. I just had to bring it up. I've seen his Shaft! Okay, Kobe Meppo. Morgan Davies is my fucking goat. I fucking love Morgan Davies as an actor. He was incredible in Evil Dead Rise. Evil Dead Rise is one of my I love horror movies. Evil Dead Rise is one of my favorite horror movies of all time. He was incredible in Evil Dead Rise. He gave an incredible performance here as Kobe as well. But Kobe as a character is far too self-aware, and he is given so many reasons for him to not want to be a Marine that it just does not make sense for him to want to stay. Kobe is naive. Kobe does not know a lot about the world. That's why he wants to be a Marine. Is because he has this false perception of what the Marines are and what they do. Helmeppo is too hot. He's sexy. Why? That shouldn't happen. Very hoity-toity energy, which I do appreciate for a character like Helmeppo, where you come from like a, oh, my dad's in the military. Oh, my dad's this really important guy. Very hoity-toity. I appreciate it. He was definitely more of a side character, but I enjoyed his performance. Okay, others and just more general takes. Everything is taken too seriously. Every character is too serious. There is a severe lack of goofiness. This is pre-time skip, not post-time skip. We don't need to be this serious yet. Buggy and Usopp, Buggy is the character I want to talk about. Buggy is the only character who keeps this energy of being a bit of a loser. I fucking love Buggy. I think Jeff Ward did an incredible performance here. You can tell he does not take this as seriously as everyone else, and I think that is genuinely a good thing when it comes to filming something like One Piece. Shanks is too old in the flashbacks. That's, again, a nothing burger complaint. You can't really deal with people's age. He's also way too serious. We get to see Kobe and Luffy's individual relationship more than we get to see Luffy's individual relationship with Zoro and Nami. I actually think the interactions between Kobe and Luffy in this are the interactions that the Straw Hats were missing, which is really disappointing. The Zoro and Nami relationship, as I've mentioned many times already, it is very, very strange to me. They feel fundamentally like the same character. They exist to do nothing, but make smart quips, one-liners, and criticize Luffy's actions. Again, I can't see Sanji. I've seen his shaft. Unconsensually. I didn't go looking for it. It came to me. I'm never gonna be able to get over this. If you haven't seen the video, you are lucky. You are so lucky. I would rather see the Hunter Biden foot job video 10 times than see that video even, a second of it. Nami feels out of character. Especially Nami. There's a severe lack of any emotion from her. And again, I do feel like that's from writing decisions and dialogue choices. I think they really fucked that up in the writer's room. Everything is a Bogart upscale. Don't ask me how. Everything is a Bogart upscale. Also, Bogart canonically has his ears pierced. I don't know if anyone, bothered to pay attention to that, but we got a close-up shot of Bogart's face, and he has his ears pierced. That is so hilarious to me. I love that. There is one character that I have yet to talk about in this section of my video. And that character is Monkey D. Garp. Monkey D. Garp was assassinated. This is not him. This is not his character. This is not Garp, actually. If you think I said a lot about Zoro, you are sorely mistaken. I am of the belief that the way shows adapt their villains from the source material speaks deeply about the writing of all characters. If you cannot adapt a villain well, 99% of the time, the other characters will suffer in writing as well. I think this is the case in Season 1 with Garp. And I feel like this season would have been exactly the same had he not been included beyond the little Diary of Kobe Meppo thing. I think he should have just pulled up, been a mysterious figure for 2 episodes, and then dipped. I think I would have been fine with that. I do want to talk about Garp specifically, because I am of the opinion, and many people would agree with me, many people agree with this, but he is genuinely one of the most complex and well-written characters in the entire series of One Piece. I would argue he is probably my favorite piece of writing in general, just in One Piece. He is incredibly realistic and incredibly complex. And that was completely taken away here, which is very, very upsetting. Garp has a deeply flawed moral compass and value system. He is a hypocrite, and he has to be. The best comparison I can give, because as I said, he feels very realistic, but the best comparison I can offer is that he feels like kind of what lifelong Republicans are like. He is part of an organization that he believed to be just. His power and influence offered him a leisurely lifestyle. The support of this system offered him freedom and a leisurely lifestyle. He created bonds within the organization, specifically with fellow recruits Sengoku and Suru. When coming face to face with the injustice of the organization and the government that he serves, he has grown too comfortable and too stubborn to change. He does not want to abandon the cause and people he has dedicated his life to, even if it means turning a blind eye to inhumanity and cruelty. Turning a blind eye is not something he would ever openly admit to because he has too much pride. This is especially seen in God Valley. Garp is an antagonist very fundamentally, and he is a villain. He is not cartoonishly evil. He is not a cartoon villain like he is shown to be here. They have stripped his character of every single ounce of nuance and complexity that he had. He exists simply to villainize and antagonize Luffy. And he is not because of, like, his child abuse. Like, he is an abuser. He is a child abuser. He's not a villain because of his mistreatment and abuse of Luffy. He's a villain because he's actively going after him as an adult. Garp would not do that. Garp is an individual capable of having an individual belief system, and this has been completely stripped from him. They are way too okay with showing that he is self-aware. Garp is self-aware, but he would never really openly admit to this. To a character like Garp, admitting self-awareness, admitting that you're wrong, is accepting that he made the wrong choice. It is always other people who are making these remarks about him. Yeah, he this is, like, weird. I don't think he would ever say that the Marines are the one thing standing between justice and anarchy. In the manga, in the God Valley flashback specifically, he acknowledges that his only reason for staying in the Marines and not becoming a pirate, as Roger and Rock suggested, was who else will keep people in line. And not because he believes in the organization itself, but because he believes in the fact that there are good people within the organization. He would never, ever, 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 ever send a warlord after Luffy. He would not ever speak to a warlord willingly. You want to know why? Because the warlords don't serve the Marines. The warlords serve the world government. And if there is one thing Garp hates more than pirates, it's the fucking world government. Garp is very capable of becoming an admiral or a fleet admiral. In fact, he's been offered the role many times, but he has consistently turned it down. The reason for this is because that would mean he has to work directly for the world nobles, the celestial dragons, and the world government. He does not want to do that. He would never interact with the world government as an authority willingly. It would impact the freedom that he has. He barely wanted to go after Luffy in Post Enies lobby. Like, he was genuinely just like, yeah, you guys can go. It's fine. You're my grandson. I'll let you go. You can leave. Whatever. And now he's going after him. He would not do that. What the fuck is this characterization? Why does he suddenly start, like, throwing shit? Why does he throw a temper tantrum? What is this whole, like, throwing shit and maniacally laughing like a fucking cartoon supervillain when he finds out Luffy wants to go to the Grand Line? I mean, in the anime and manga, they first meet again in the Grand Line. Like, that's crazy. Garp and Luffy are fundamentally similar characters. A lot of people don't want to admit this because Garp is very morally corrupt and he has committed actions that are literally reprehensible. But Luffy and Garp are two sides of the same coin. Dragon is the outlier in the Monkey D family. If Luffy were to have become a marine, he likely would have been like Garp, and if Garp were to have become a pirate, he likely would have been like Luffy. This means that he is supposed to be a goofy character just like Luffy. He is far too serious here. He is far too book smart. He is far too serious. He's not silly enough. Where are the rice crackers? Where's the nose picking? Where's the falling asleep at random moments? Where's the standing up naps? He is an overgrown child in the anime and manga, and he is just missing that completely here. Rather than Dragon being the outlier in this family, Garp fundamentally feels way more like a dragon-like character. Dragon, again, is meant to be the standout member of the Monkey D family, and as such, he does not have these same, or he is not shown currently to have these same quirks as his father or his son. He is not shown to be this massive glutton. He is not shown to pick his nose or to fall asleep standing up. He is a serious character with a very serious belief system, and Garp feels far more like Dragon here than he feels like Garp. His relationship with Roger. Why is he at the execution? I refuse to believe that Garp would attend Roger's execution. Regardless of the fact that Garp and Roger were really rivals for many years, there is a sense of trust there, and there's a bond that exists there that cannot exist without deep friendship. I don't think Garp would have been able to stand next to a person who really means a lot to him, who means a lot to his career. He has spent his entire life to this point chasing after him. The whole reason he went to God Valley was not because Shaki was there, it was because Roger was there. They have a very deep relationship, and I don't believe that he would attend Roger's execution, let alone stand right next to him and claim him to be an evil monster. I don't think he'd do that. His game with Kobe. Garp would never play that game. It's a game of strategy. It's a game of book smarts. Garp acts on impulse and intuition. He is not a strategy type. He is not a by-the-book type. He is very much gut instinct and going with your gut. At this point in his life, Garp doesn't really care about capturing and killing pirates as much as he does protecting young Marines, and instilling his beliefs that there is good in a sea of bad Marines. And this is his reasoning for training Kobe and Helmeppo. He does not want them to fall into the bad, corrupt part of the Marines that he believes exists. He wants them to be good. He wants them to be honorable, even if the organization itself is not honorable. He believes that by having more good Marines, there is a chance that the system itself will change from the inside. Also, he would not delegate this much. He much prefers doing things himself, as seen when he is the one tossing cannonballs in Post Ennie's lobby at his grandson. He does not get anyone to fire actual cannons. He launches them shits like baseballs. And he does it for funsies. He does it just because he can. That is also the easiest effect to CGI. So I don't know why they used cannons for that fight or interaction, like, at all. I think it would have been a lot more accurate to his character to just have him throwing cannonballs with his bare hands. He, for some reason, trusts Kobe and Helmeppo to go and search for Luffy in Syrup Village. They are chore boys at this point. They are nothing more than chore boys. I don't know where the relationship between these two comes from. It's very odd. Again, because this plotline is being placed in between the main plot line, It is hard to follow, and it gets rid of any meaningful interactions we see between the Straw Hats, but also between Garp and Kobe. Like, that's a meaningful relationship that is meant to exist that we do not see interactions for. The reason that he stops going after pirates in his age is because after Roger's death, there was really no point for him to do it. He spent his entire career chasing after Roger. Heated rivalry. They were heated rivalry. Let's be real here. In this, that is not the case. He's heavily involved in the capture and killing of pirates. He would not betray his relationship with Roger like this. There's a quote in one of the episodes, and he says, "You color outside the lines, you get your arm chopped off." This portrays Garp as a very by-the-book man, when he is objectively not. Garp is known to march to the beat of his own drum. He is known to color outside the lines. He is not a typical Marine. He does not follow Marine orders. He does what he wants when he wants. Garp would never fight Luffy like this. He would never even try to prevent him from entering the Grand Line. Fundamentally, all of the Monkey D's represent some sort of freedom. Garp represents personal freedom. It's Luffy's freedom to be able to go to the Grand Line, and that's his personal choice. I don't believe Garp would come in between that, a man and his personal freedom. At the end of their fight in Arlong Park, Garp claims that the whole thing was a test for Luffy. Garp would not test Luffy like this. Garp has been testing Luffy his entire life by abusing him. His whole beef and his whole goal for the entirety of the season was to test him. He did all of that for nothing. Why would he give up his distance between the world government and send Mihawk after Luffy if it was just a test? Why would he give up his whole thing about personal freedom and go after Luffy and prevent him from being free? At the end of this season, after all he has done, going against his own personal brand of freedom, he is suddenly bringing this up to Kobe and Helmeppo, that they should follow their own moral code and they should never sacrifice their code, when the entire fucking season was Garp sacrificing his fucking code. This character is but a husk of Monkey D. Garp. This is not Garp. This is a completely different character who shares the same name as him, and that's it. These are not the same characters whatsoever. I never thought I'd see a point in my life where I am ranting to a camera about poor writing of Monkey D. Garp. Are you fucking kidding me? 21 years of my life has led to this point. 21 years of my life has led to this video. To conclude, I want to include some of what I have heard about season 2, because from what I've heard from others, season 2 actually solves a lot of these problems that I have, which is like, I'm glad to hear it. I'm just really disappointed it did not happen in this first season. If this is the season that is meant to get people into watching this show and is meant to get people invested, I'd prefer it if it felt like it was worth getting invested in. I am very happy to hear that a lot of these issues have been rectified. So I may end up checking out season 2, specifically the episodes with Chopper, because if you cannot tell, Chopper's my favorite character. But yeah, I may check out season 2 at some point. I love One Piece. It is a series that means a lot to me, and it is a series that has very fundamentally changed my life. I wanted to enjoy this. I wanted to be able to consume it as its own standalone project, and I wanted to like it, and I could not, and that makes me incredibly sad. I cannot look past the mischaracterizations and the butchery of the plot and character writing and consume it as a standalone piece of media when it is trying to serve as an adaptation of the source material. Again, this makes me really upset. I think there's a lot here. I think there's a diamond in the rough here, and I hope that with season 2 and with season 3 and however long they continue to make this for, I see more of that diamond and less of the coal. The only real positive that I can see from this series is that it is getting a lot more people into One Piece, and especially the manga. I am very notoriously not a fan of the One Piece anime. I think the One Piece anime is a bad adaptation. If you're gonna consume One Piece, I highly suggest you read the manga. It is the best way to consume it. This leans more towards the season 8 Game of Thrones end of the spectrum rather than the Sex and the City end of the spectrum. I think this is a little bit of a slop TV show. Nothing wrong with slop TV show. I love slop TV shows. It's just not my kind of slop TV show. I feel like it does the characters and story of One Piece a disservice. I don't think it's an exception to the rule that anime and manga adaptations are bad. I don't expect other people to hold the same opinion as me. TV is subjective. Art is subjective. If you enjoyed it, I'm happy, you know? Like, if it got you into One Piece, I'm even happier because I love One Piece and I think it's a great piece of media, and anything that gets more people into it, I am happy. I am pleased. But it was not my kind of TV, and I'm disappointed that it wasn't, and that's okay too. If you don't follow me on Twitter, I speak a lot about One Piece on there at foam__soap. If you want to follow me, if you know me from Twitter, hi! I have been meaning to make this video for a long time, and it's been 4 years since I've uploaded anything onto my YouTube channel. This wig is really hot. Thank you for watching if you have stuck around this far. I appreciate you. This is really just a grown woman ranting in a Nami cosplay about something that really just does not matter. So thank you for watching. Bye!